Sand devils danced across the New Mexico territory like ghosts of the damned, spinning dust into copper spirals beneath a sky gone the color of old pewter. Mesquite and creosote bush stretched endless in every direction, broken only by the skeletal remains of Joshua trees reaching toward heaven like penitent hands. Catherine Brennan had been tracking him for 3 days. Her horse, a paint mare named Mercy, picked carefully through the arroyo, hooves finding purchase on stones worn smooth by flash floods that came and went like judgment itself. Catherine's eyes, green as bottle glass and twice as hard, never left the ground. Boot prints, fresh ones. Size 11, maybe 12. The left heel worn down on the outside edge, just like the marshal said it would be, just like her brother's killer would have. The sun hammered down without mercy, ironic given her horse's name, turning the landscape into something biblical. Heat shimmered off distant mesas, making them waver like promises that couldn't be kept. Catherine's cotton shirt clung to her back, her leather vest creaking with each breath. The Winchester across her saddle was loaded. It had been loaded for 72 hours straight. She found him at an abandoned line shack near Rattlesnake Canyon, trying to work a rope off his ankle where he'd caught it in an old wolf trap. Some might call it providence. Catherine called it justice starting to balance its scales. He looked up when Mercy's shadow fell across him. A man younger than she'd expected, maybe 25, with coal-black hair past his shoulders and copper skin that spoke of Apache blood. His face was a mask of pain. Teeth gritted, dark eyes blazing with equal parts defiance and desperation. "Help me," he gasped, fingers raw and bleeding from pulling at the rusted metal. "Please, I've been here since yesterday." Catherine dismounted slow, deliberate. Her boots hit the hardpan with soft thuds that sounded like a judge's gavel. She pulled the Winchester from its scabbard, let it rest easy in her hands. "Name's Nashoba," she said, not a question. "Means wolf in Choctaw. Though your mama was Apache, wasn't she? Your daddy was that trader from Santa Fe, the one who got religion too late to matter." His eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're her. The sister. Catherine Brennan." She worked the lever on the Winchester, chambering a round that sang like a copper bell. "And you're the man who shot my brother in Alamogordo. Shot him in the back while he was walking away, while he was trying to make peace." "It wasn't—" He grimaced, pulling again at the trap. His leg was swelling bad, turning colors that spoke of infection starting its dark work. "Please, you gotta let me—" "Let you what? Run? Hide?" Catherine's voice was steady as bedrock, but something flickered behind her eyes, something that might have been doubt in a weaker woman. "You had 3 months to turn yourself in, 3 months to face what you did. Instead, you ran like a coward. Now you're asking for mercy from a woman whose only brother is buried on a hill outside Alamogordo, with a marker that reads, 'Murdered, age 23. Nashoba stopped struggling, went still as a rabbit that knows the hawk is circling. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter, edged with something that might have been truth trying to claw its way out. "There's more to it," he said. "More than what the marshal told you. More than what the witnesses said they saw. There always is." Catherine moved closer, rifle never wavering. "Every guilty man I've ever met had a story, had a reason, but you don't understand." "Then why are you still standing there?" Nashoba's eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time she saw something besides fear in them, something that looked almost like relief. "If you come here just to kill me, why ain't I dead yet?" The question hung between them like smoke from a distant fire. Catherine's finger rested on the trigger guard. Not on the trigger itself. Not yet. "Because," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper, "my brother would have wanted to know the truth. Even if it killed him." She paused, throat working. "It did kill him, as it happens, But he died believing in truth more than vengeance, died believing there was always a reason to listen before you judge. A dust devil spun past them, rattling the dried mesquite branches and singing its lonesome song. Somewhere far off, a coyote called to its pack. The sun continued its slow burn across the sky, indifferent to human drama playing out beneath it. Catherine made her decision. She pulled rope from her saddle, approached carefully, Winchester within reach, but not in hand. Neshoba watched her with eyes that held too many questions and not enough hope. When she bound his hands in front of him, his shoulders sagged. "I'm taking you back," she said, "but not to hang, not yet. We're going to my ranch, and you're going to tell me everything. Every detail, every word, every breath of what happened that day. And if I believe you, if I think there's even a chance you're telling the truth, then maybe, just maybe, we go to the marshal together." "And if you don't believe me?" Catherine's jaw tightened. "Then I finish what I came here to do." She worked the trap open with a pry bar from the shack, took 15 minutes of leverage and sweat and more cursing than her mama would have approved. When Neshoba's leg came free, he nearly fainted from the pain. Catherine caught him, surprising them both, and they stood there for a moment, captor and captive, breathing hard in the merciless heat. "Can you ride?" she asked. "Don't have much choice, do I?" She helped him onto Mercy, had to practically lift him into the saddle, then climbed up behind him. Her left arm wrapped around his waist to hold him steady. Her right hand stayed near her revolver. Trust only went so far, and the desert had taught her that trust was currency best spent sparingly. They headed west, toward the ranch that had been her father's, then her brother's, and now was hers alone. The sun painted long shadows behind them, stretching their silhouettes into something almost beautiful, almost noble. But Catherine knew better than to trust shadows. She'd learned that the hard way. "Why?" Neshoba asked after an hour of silence. His voice was faint, weakened by pain and heat, and something that might have been hope trying not to get itself killed. "Why not just shoot me and be done with it?" Catherine was quiet for so long he thought maybe she wouldn't answer. Then, soft as a prayer, "Because I'm tired of funerals. Tired of graves, tired of night after night wondering if I did right by my brother's memory. Maybe you're guilty as sin and bound for hell. Maybe you're not. But either way, I'm going to know the truth before I meet my Maker. I'm going to stand before God with clean hands or bloody ones, but not with ignorant ones." The ranch appeared on the horizon like salvation. Weathered buildings huddled together against the vastness. Windmill turning slow against the gunmetal sky. Catherine felt Neshoba tense in her arms. "Easy," she murmured. "We got a long night ahead of us, a long conversation. You run, and I will shoot you. You lie, and I will know. But you tell me true." She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of something that might have been hope buried under 3 months of grief. "You tell me true, and maybe we both find a way to live with ourselves come morning." Barn wood creaked in the evening wind like old bones settling. Catherine had tied Neshoba to a support beam, not cruel tight, but secure enough that he couldn't run. His injured leg stretched out in front of him, wrapped in clean bandages she'd applied without speaking. A kerosene lamp cast amber light that made the hay bales glow like scattered gold, painting shadows that climbed the walls like specters of things unsaid. She sat on a wooden stool maybe 8 feet away, Winchester across her lap. Between them stretched a gulf wider than the territory itself, filled with grief and guilt and the weight of truth not yet spoken. "Start at the beginning," Catherine said. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, fingers drumming once, twice on the rifle stock before she stilled them. "Leave nothing out. I'll know if you're lying." Neshoba's chest rose and fell, each breath visible in the lamplight. When he finally spoke, His voice carried the texture of something long buried finally breaking surface. "Your brother didn't die because of me," he said. "He died because of what he knew, because of what we both knew." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "Don't start with riddles. Plain words, plain truth." "All right." He shifted, wincing as pain shot through his leg. "Plain words. Your brother Thomas, he was a good man, better than most. We met about 6 months back at a poker game in Alamogordo. I was dealing, he was playing, and after a few hands, he called out another player for marking cards. That sounds like Thomas. This player, name was Silas Cord. He didn't take kindly to being called a cheat. Drew on your brother right there in the saloon." Neshoba's eyes met hers, and Catherine saw the memory living in them, sharp as broken glass. Thomas was faster. He had his pistol out and aimed before Cord cleared leather, but he didn't shoot. Catherine felt something twist in her chest. That was Thomas, all right. Quick with his hands, but slow with his judgment. Their father had called it mercy. Their mother had called it foolishness. Catherine had never known what to call it, except maybe the thing that made her love her little brother more than her own life. Cord backed down, Neshoba continued. Left the saloon talking big about how he'd been cheated himself, how the whole game was rigged. But Thomas and I, we got to talking after. Found out we had some things in common. Both of us trying to make our way honest in a territory that don't reward honesty much. Both of us carrying blood that made some folks look at us sideways. My brother didn't judge people by their blood. No, he didn't. Which is why we became friends. Neshoba's voice softened, carrying a note of genuine grief that Catherine couldn't quite dismiss as performance. Real friends, the kind that matter. He told me about you, about this ranch, about the life you were trying to build. I told him about my mother's people, about trying to walk between two worlds that both wanted to claim me, but neither wanted to accept me. The wind picked up outside, rattling the barn door. Catherine's mare nickered softly from her stall. The lamp flame guttered, then steadied. Get to Alamogordo, Catherine said, though her voice had lost some of its edge. Get to the day he died. Neshoba nodded slowly. Silas Cord. Turned out he was more than just a card sharp. He was running guns to renegade Apache bands, stirring up trouble between settlers and native folks, playing both sides, getting rich while people died. Thomas found out about it, started asking questions, started making Cord nervous. How'd you know this? Because Cord approached me. The words came out bitter, stained with self-recrimination. Figured because of my Apache blood I'd want in on it. Figured wrong. I told Thomas what was happening, and together we decided to take what we knew to the territorial marshal. Catherine leaned forward, rifle still across her lap, but her posture changed. Less predator, more listener. Go on? We agreed to meet behind the Alamogordo General Store. Noon, 3 days after we'd talked. Time enough for Thomas to gather more evidence, for me to find out where Cord was storing the weapons. But Cord? Neshoba's jaw tightened, muscle jumping beneath his skin. Cord had someone watching us, knew we were onto him. He made his own plans. The lamp flame stretched tall, then compressed, making the shadows dance. That day, the day Thomas died, I got there early, saw Cord waiting with 2 other men, hired guns by the look of them, professional killers. They weren't there to talk. Neshoba's voice dropped, and Catherine had to strain to hear him over the wind. I tried to warn Thomas when I saw him coming, called out his name, but Cord moved fast. Drew and fired before your brother even knew there was danger. No. Catherine's voice cracked like thin ice. The marshal said you shot him. Said there were witnesses who saw you with the gun in your hand. I did have the gun in my hand. Neshoba's eyes never left hers, and in them Catherine saw something she'd been afraid to see. Truth that hurt worse than lies ever could. When Cord shot Thomas, I drew and fired back. Hit Cord in the shoulder. His men scattered. They weren't being paid enough to die, but by the time I got to your brother—" He stopped, throat working. "By the time I got to Thomas, he was bleeding bad. Real bad. I held him, tried to stop the bleeding, and that's when Cord played his final card." "What do you mean?" "He started shouting for help, shouting that I'd shot an unarmed man in cold blood," holding his own shoulder like he'd been caught in the crossfire trying to help. His hired guns were gone. Only witnesses were townspeople who'd heard shots and come running. What they saw was me holding a dying man, my gun still drawn, and Silas Cord bleeding and pointing at me, calling me a murderer. Catherine felt the world tilting beneath her, felt 3 months of certainty crumbling like sandstone in a flood. "Thomas, did he say anything? Before he asked me to run." Neshoba's voice broke, and for the first time, Catherine saw tears tracking down his copper-dark cheeks. "Said it wouldn't matter what the truth was. Said folks would believe Cord because he was white and prosperous and I was neither. Said—" He drew a shaking breath. "Said to tell his sister that he loved her, that he was sorry, that he tried to do the right thing." Catherine's hands were shaking. The Winchester slipped from her lap, clattering to the wooden floor. She didn't pick it up. "Why didn't you tell the marshal this? Why did you run?" "I tried." The words came out raw, scraped. "Tried to explain to the first lawman who showed up, but Cord was already spinning his version, me as the gun runner, Thomas as the man who'd discovered it and tried to stop me, Cord as the citizen trying to help. Had it all backwards. And when I saw how that lawman looked at me, saw how the crowd was turning—" He shook his head. "I ran. Because I'm a coward. Because I wanted to live. Because I thought maybe somewhere down the line I could prove the truth. But running just made me look guilty. Made everything worse." Silence filled the barn like water, deep and heavy. Catherine sat frozen, her world reordering itself around this new gravity. 3 months of hunting. 3 months of hatred, 3 months of planning murder, all built on the foundation of a lie told by a man whose name she'd barely known. "Silas Cord," she finally said. "Where is he now?" "Alamogordo, far as I know. Probably still running his operation, still getting rich while good people suffer. Your brother's death got blamed on me, so Cord walked away clean. Probably laughing about it." Catherine stood abruptly, began pacing. Her mind was a whirlwind of implications, possibilities, rage that had found a new target. She stopped in front of Neshoba, looked down at him with eyes that held something different now. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of belief. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked. But her voice held no accusation now. Only the question of someone who wanted desperately to believe, but had been wrong before. "You don't," Neshoba said simply. "Not for certain. But I got no reason to lie anymore. You could have killed me in that canyon, could have shot me 100 times on the ride here. If I was going to lie, I'd tell you something easier to believe, something that made me look better. I wouldn't tell you I ran. Wouldn't tell you I held your brother while he died and then left him there because I was too scared to stay." The truth of that hit Catherine like a physical blow. Lies were always prettier than truth. Always easier. The story Neshoba told, full of his own cowardice, his own failure, had the ugly weight of reality. She walked to the barn door, looked out at stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. The same stars that had looked down on her brother's death. The same stars that had watched her waste 3 months hunting the wrong man. "What do we do now?" Neshoba asked quietly. Catherine turned back to face him, and in her eyes burned something new, not the cold fire of vengeance, but the hot flame of purpose finding its true target. "Now?" She walked over, began untying his hands. Now we go get the man who really killed my brother. Together. Dawn broke over New Mexico territory like God's own judgment, all reds and golds and purples that turned the desert into something holy. Catherine saddled 2 horses while Neshoba leaned against the corral fence, his injured leg splinted proper now, wrapped tight. The swelling had gone down some. The pain hadn't. "You sure about this?" he asked, watching her work. "Cord's got money, got influence, got people who'll back his word over ours." Catherine cinched the saddle tight, then met his eyes. In the clean morning light, she looked different than she had in the barn, younger somehow, despite the lines grief had carved around her eyes. "I'm sure I can't live with myself if I don't try. Sure I owe my brother more than just killing the wrong man. Sure that truth matters even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She handed him the reins to a sturdy buckskin gelding, not Mercy, who she'd ride herself, but steady enough for a man with a bad leg. "You can ride?" "I've ridden with worse." He hauled himself into the saddle, grimacing but managing. "Bullet wound in my side once, broken ribs twice. This leg don't hardly compare." They rode east, toward Alamogordo, toward whatever reckoning waited there. The sun climbed higher, burning away the cool mercy of morning. Catherine had packed weapons, her Winchester, a Colt revolver, and a shotgun that had been her father's. She'd also packed something else, the letters Thomas had sent her in the months before he died, letters that mentioned Silas Cord, letters that talked about corruption and gun running and a friend he'd made who was helping him investigate, a friend named Neshoba. "He wrote about you," she said, as they followed the trail through a narrow canyon where the walls rose red and ancient on either side. "Never mentioned your name, but the descriptions match. Said you were trying to walk an honest path in a crooked territory. Said he trusted you." Neshoba rode in silence for a moment. Then, "He wrote about you too. In a letter he gave me to hold, case something happened to him. Was supposed to mail it if what happened, happened." Catherine's hands tightened on the reins. "You still have it?" "Hidden. Safe. Didn't know how to get it to you without getting myself killed." He paused. "There's things in it. About Cord. Evidence. Written in Thomas's own hand. Dates, names, places where guns were moved. He was building a case. Guess he knew it might cost him." "And it did." "And it did," Neshoba agreed quietly. They stopped to rest the horses at noon in the shade of an overhang where petroglyphs spoke of peoples who'd lived and died in this land long before white settlers or Apache raiders made it a battleground. Catherine shared jerky and hardtack, canteen water that tasted of metal and distance. "What happens when we get to Alamogordo?" Neshoba asked. "Cord sees me. He'll either run or try to finish what he started." "Let him try." Catherine's voice was flat, certain. "I'm done running from truth, done letting guilty men prosper while good ones die. We go to the marshal first, the territorial one, not the local law court might have bought. We show him Thomas's letter, we tell him the whole story, and if the marshal won't listen..." She checked her revolver, spun the cylinder. "Then we make sure the whole town hears it, loud enough that Cord can't hide behind lies anymore." Neshoba studied her face, the determined set of her jaw, the steely glint in those green eyes. "You know this might not end well, might not end with justice, might end with both of us dead or in jail." "Might," Catherine acknowledged. "But it'll end with the truth told, with my brother's name cleared, with the real killer known." "That's worth dying for if it comes to it." They reached Alamogordo as the sun began its descent, painting everything in shades of amber and shadow. The town was bigger than Catherine remembered from Thomas's funeral. More buildings, more people, more noise. Progress marching forward, indifferent to the small tragedies it crushed beneath its boots. The Territorial Marshal's office was a squat adobe building near the center of town. Marshal Henry Briggs was a career lawman, 20 years wearing the badge, with a reputation for being hard but fair. Catherine had met him once, at Thomas's funeral. He'd shaken her hand and told her they'd find the killer. They had found him, she'd thought at the time. Found him and let him escape. Now she knew different. Marshal Briggs looked up when they entered, his weathered face going through a series of expressions: surprise, recognition, alarm. His hand moved toward the gun at his hip when he saw Neshoba, but Catherine spoke fast. "Marshal, I need you to listen. All the way through, before you draw that weapon or call for help. Can you do that?" Something in her voice, some quality of absolute conviction, made Briggs hesitate. His hand stayed near his gun, but he nodded slowly. "I'm listening, Miss Brennan." She told him everything, showed him Thomas's letters, explained about Cord's frame-up, about the gun running, about 3 months wasted hunting an innocent man while the guilty one walked free. Neshoba sat silent, letting Catherine speak, adding details only when she asked him to. Briggs listened, his face unreadable as weathered stone. When Catherine finished, he sat back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "That's quite a story," he said finally. "It's the truth." "Maybe." Briggs looked at Neshoba. "And maybe it's a clever lie from a killer and his accomplice." "How do I know?" "Because I'm still alive," Neshoba said quietly. "Miss Brennan tracked me for 3 days, had me helpless in a trap, wounded, defenseless. Could have put a bullet in my head and claimed justice served. Nobody would have questioned it. Instead, she brought me back, listened to my story, and decided to risk her own life bringing me here. That tell you anything?" Briggs considered this, then nodded slowly. "Tells me you're either innocent or the most persuasive liar I've met. Tells me Miss Brennan's either found the truth or been fooled by a master." He stood, began pacing. "Problem is, Silas Cord's a respected businessman in this town. Got friends in high places. You're asking me to believe he's a cold-blooded killer and gun runner based on letters from a dead man and the word of the man accused of killing him." "Then investigate," Catherine said, leaning forward. "Check Cord's warehouses, follow his shipments, watch his movements. The evidence is there. Thomas found it. You can too. That takes time, takes warrants, takes proof. Then start with this." Catherine pulled out one final letter, one she'd been holding back. "This is the letter Thomas gave Neshoba to mail if something happened. Read it." Briggs took the letter, unfolded it, began reading. His expression changed, subtle at first, then more pronounced. When he finished, he looked up at both of them with eyes that had made a decision. "All right," he said. "Here's what we're going to do. Neshoba, you're going to stay here in my custody. Protective custody, not arrest. Miss Brennan, you're going to take me to your ranch, where we're going to retrieve any other evidence you have. Then we're going to quietly investigate Silas Cord. Quietly, because if he knows we're coming, the evidence will disappear along with him." "How long?" Catherine asked. "Give me 3 days. If I can't find proof in 3 days..." He hesitated. "Then maybe we're wrong about Cord, and we need to look harder at Neshoba's story. But my gut says you're telling the truth. And I didn't get to be Territorial Marshal by ignoring my gut." Catherine wanted to argue for immediate action, wanted to storm Cord's office and drag justice out at gunpoint. But she'd learned patience from this land, had learned that some things couldn't be rushed, only endured. She nodded. 3 days. Those 3 days felt like 3 years. Catherine stayed at a boarding house in Alamogordo, unable to leave while Neshoba sat in a cell and Briggs conducted his careful, quiet investigation. She spent the time writing, long letters to friends, to other lawmen, to newspapers. If Briggs's investigation failed, she'd try public opinion instead. On the 3rd day, Briggs came to find her. "Found the guns," he said simply. 2 warehouses full. found records showing shipments to renegade bands, found payoffs to local law, found enough evidence to hang Cord twice over. He paused. Also found something else, a witness, one of Cord's hired men willing to testify. He was there the day Thomas died, confirms Neshoba's story, word for word. Cord shot your brother, then framed Neshoba for it. Catherine felt something break inside her, the last dam holding back 3 months of grief finally giving way. She wept, not gracefully but ugly-like, the way people cry when they've been holding back too long. Briggs gave her his handkerchief and looked away, giving her what privacy he could. When she could speak again, she asked, "Where's Cord now?" "Under arrest. Been locked up for 6 hours. He's screaming about his rights, about false charges, about how he'll have my badge." Briggs smiled grimly. "But he's going to trial, and he's going to hang. And Neshoba? Free to go. Soon as you're ready, I'll release him." They walked together to the marshal's office. Neshoba stood when they entered his cell, his face showing cautious hope. Briggs unlocked the door. "You're free," the marshal said. "With apologies from the territory of New Mexico for the injustice done to you. I'll make sure the record's set straight, make sure folks know you were wrongly accused." Neshoba stepped out of the cell, still limping on his wounded leg, and looked at Catherine. For a long moment they stood there, two people bound together by death and lies, and the hard work of finding truth in a territory built on violence and deception. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for believing me, for risking everything to prove it." "Thank Thomas," Catherine replied. "He's the one who knew you were worth believing in. I just finally listened." They walked out of the marshal's office together into afternoon sun that felt cleaner somehow, like the light had been washed by truth and made bright again. The town looked the same buildings, same streets, same people going about their lives. But Catherine saw it different now, saw how much darkness could hide in plain sight, saw how easy it was to believe lies that looked like justice. "What will you do now?" she asked Neshoba, as they stood in the dusty street. He was quiet for a moment, looking around at the town that had condemned him, the territory that had hunted him. Then, "Don't rightly know. Thought I'd be dead by now or running forever. Didn't plan past that." Catherine made a decision, one that would have surprised her 3 days ago, but felt right now. "I need help at the ranch. Hands who know the land, who can work hard, who can be trusted. Job's yours if you want it. Won't pay much, but it's honest work. And," she paused, searching for the right words, "and I think Thomas would have wanted it that way. You were his friend." "That makes you mine." Neshoba's eyes widened, then softened. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like that a lot." They rode back toward Catherine's ranch as the sun set, painting the desert in its evening colors. Deep purples and burning oranges and that particular shade of blue that only exists in the moments between day and night. The wind carried the smell of creosote and dust and rain that might come tomorrow or might wait another month. Hard to tell in this country. Hard to know anything for certain except that the land endured and truth mattered, and sometimes mercy and justice could walk the same path if you were willing to do the hard work of finding it. Silas Cord was convicted 2 months later, hanged in Alamogordo on a Monday morning, with half the town watching. Catherine didn't attend. She stayed at the ranch, working alongside Neshoba to repair fences and break horses and build something good out of the ashes of grief. Some nights, she'd sit on the porch and look at the stars and talk to Thomas like he was sitting beside her. Told him about the ranch, about the work, about the man who'd been his friend and was slowly becoming hers. Told him that she'd found the truth, had done right by his memory. Hoped he knew, hoped he'd rest easier. The territory moved on the way it always did. New conflicts rose, old wounds healed or didn't, and the desert kept its secrets while giving up just enough truth to keep people honest. Catherine Brennan lived to be 73, ran her ranch with Neshoba as her foreman and partner, and never once regretted the decision she'd made in that barn when she chose to listen instead of kill. Years later, when folks asked her about it, about the manhunt and the truth and the redemption, she'd just smile and say, "My brother believed in listening before judging, died for that belief. I figured the least I could do was honor it. And if they pushed for more," she'd add, "truth's worth the hard work, worth the patience, worth the risk, because lies might run fast, but truth's got longer legs. Truth always catches up in the end." The desert wind would carry her words away, across the mesas and arroyos, past the graves of those who died for truth and those who died running from it, across the whole vast territory that was still learning, still growing, still trying to figure out the difference between justice and vengeance. Some lessons, the land seemed to whisper back, take more than one lifetime to learn. But that's all right. The desert's got nothing but time. Thanks for staying to the end of this Western tale of truth, redemption, and the hard choices that define us. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more cinematic stories from the frontier of the human heart.